This is Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Here are your hosts, Dr. Tim Slecker and Dr. Johnny Lupinacci, educated educators talking education.
Yes, it is. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Monday, the week of July 4th, nation's independence celebration, fireworks, all coming up this week. Hot dogs on the grill, Johnny. All those great things. I mean, some people like that. Steaks,
Tim, if you
hamburgers.
want to throw the tube steaks on the grill, man, I'm sure people are coming. I'm going to be throwing a whole variety of things
All
on
right.
the grill. It's cookout time. It's basically all week long. Well, starting Wednesday, I'll start kicking into it, and then Thursday and Friday we're going to be.
I was like,
grilling.
man, you cooking out every day this week, man. I'm coming over. Holy crap. Okay, but you're gonna wait till Wednesday to at least start.
Probably to start.
Yeah, we got some things. I should throw in there. I got some good veggie burgers. I got a couple of my my own children who have, gone the vegetarian. One's gone vegetarian, one's gone vegan.
Ooh.
So yeah, that makes sometimes planning a family dinner a bit of you know what? We got a little bit of this over here, we got a little bit of that over there. And for all of those, hey, but happy 4th week, Johnny. One of the things to remind people, where do you get Busted Pencils? Well, go to Civic Media, to the website. More importantly, though, too, Johnny, the Civic Media app. I feel like we haven't reminded people enough about how important it is to download the Civic Media app. Whether you're on an iPhone, whether you're on an Android type of phone, you can get it. Download the Civic Media app. And with that, you can always have Busted Pencils and all of the other great shows that go along with Civic Media. They're all right there, right in your phone. You can listen all the time. And we said, just like our friends in Finland, they listen on the Civic Media app to Busted Pencils. So that's the reality of how awesome the Civic Media app is. Johnny, I know you have at least 2 or 3 different Civic Media apps across all those phones.
Oh yeah, man. I ask my smart speaker all the time to send Civic Media stuff over the Bluetooth. Let's go. Let's listen to all these shows. Keep me up on like what's happening in politics of our country, but also, what's happening over in Wisconsin where so many of our listeners are. Hey, listeners, if you can, subscribe to the Civic Media Weekly Digest to keep up with your local Wisconsin news and all of our fantastic shows on the Civic Media Radio Network. So go to civicmedia.us/email. Never miss a beat. Hey, and while you're on that grind, get over to the Civic Media website. Check out their merch store by going to civicmedia.us and clicking store in the top right corner. We love radio. We know you do too. Show that love and look great while you're doing it in a hat or one of the 6 designs supporting refreshing hometown radio. And in fact, Tim, you can go and check out Busted Pencil specific merch. Right? What we're going to do for you listeners, we're going to drop that link in the description of the podcast that drops right after the show. But Tim, it's Monday, picking right up where we left off last week, Friday, but before we jump into, still reeling on the heels of the debate, talking about what's happening in this country, how it's related to education, but also some things that are kind of growing out of education. You brought it up Friday and it's carried heavily through the weekend. This push from Christian nationalists, right, to really make state legislation. And I'm always saying, Tim, don't worry about this now.
I
worry
know
about the national election, but when it comes to education, remember education is a state right. Well, we'd be remiss if we didn't come back around to what we were talking about on Friday today and get back into what's happening in Oklahoma, what's happening in Louisiana, what's happening in Texas. Because even though, I'm going to say, hey, education is a state right, and there are lots of states who are pushing back against that fundamentalist takeover. But you know what? If it's happening in a nearby state, it's likely to trickle. And I've said before on past shows, we have a long legacy of testing the boundaries in some of these states and then pushing out from there. And I share some of your concerns, Tim, that you brought up at the end of last week with this sort of Christian nationalism that's being imposed on our public schools. And that's not Tim and Johnny being anti-Christianity or anti-religion. in any sense. But we're going to get into it tonight. But before we get into it, Tim, just how are you doing, man? It's the beginning of the week. What's going on, man?
I am actually doing incredibly well today. The heat dome over my area in Ohio has lifted, and went out hiking this morning. 60 degrees in the morning for a hike. Beautiful out there. I was like, this is the way it is. What a day to start a Monday. Boy, I just see Sherry, man. She's just dropping in a whole bunch of text messages. Sherry, we love you. Sherry from Horicon out there. Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about that King and Johnny, we need a civics lesson. I was thinking though, one of the best places you can get your awesome, like, kind of civics lesson with friends. If you're in Madison, you go to the Madison Minocqua Brewery, Madison Tap Room. You can go there. Or, Johnny, as you always keep pointing out now, too, if you happen to be all the way up in the North Country, go to the Minocqua Brewery right there on site. You know why? Because BustED Pencils is sponsored by the Minocqua Brewing Company. Yeah, you know what? They are an awesome company. Minocqua Brewing Company is making Wisconsin great again, one beer at a time. Check out MinocquaBrewingCompany.com to see where you can buy their progressive beer. And Johnny, am I just looking at that right away? LA Tom has jumped on the line before we've even really
started. My guy. Let's get him
we haven't even started. Let's bring him on. Yeah.
Let's set the tone. Set the tone, LA Tom. Set the tone. What's happening, my man?
Well, first off, guys, you're right. You can listen to the Civic Media app everywhere in the world.
Yes,
I'm from Wisconsin, small town, 2,000 people. And, I'm in LA. I've lived here for years, and I listen to the Civic Media every single day. And I love the actual factualness of the radio station and everything that it brings in terms of conversation to people, and actually shows a lot of sunlight, which is the best disinfectant for what's going on in this country.
Sure.
I really wish that we could start calling these people anti-Christian nationalists, because they have nothing to do with the word Christian nationalist. And I think that, I feel like they're taking the Lord thy God's name in vain. Number 3 there on the old commandments, because they're using Jesus' name in a way that he never really professed to be. If you read Matthew 15 and you read some of the different things where Christ actually talked, that it doesn't. These guys are anti-Christian nationalists, is what they are. They're antichrist. That being said, there should be a separation between church and state. It's the bottom line. It's secular. That was the whole point of our country. And today's Supreme Court goes and makes our presidents kings. And I wanted to ask, can Joe Biden actually now go and, I guess, make an executive action to put on, since we have 13 circuit courts around the United States, put 13 Supreme Court justices on the court right now?
Well, is it his official act? I mean, boy, LA Tom, thank you for the call right away and hitting everything we plan on talking about tonight. Yeah, the Supreme Court ruling, Christian nationalism or anti-Christian. I know, Tom, it's all there. The question, though, so what does this then imply for the current president, Johnny Lupinacci, President Biden? Does this give the current president the ability to think creatively about what his duties are in office and how he can execute them, and how he might say, hey, look, it was part of my job, man. That's what I had to do. I know I've been seeing a lot of speculation out there saying, what do these rulings actually mean? And Johnny, we are looking forward to actually really getting hard into that spot, particularly about that Christian nationalism, though. Tom, thank you. I think on that one, we really need to talk about, you said separation of church and state. Johnny kind of let us in on this one to be talking about this. Where are we going to come down on this? Because education, public education, is very specifically left to the states to decide in their state constitutions. And so what we're seeing coming out of Texas, what we're seeing coming out of Louisiana, coming out of Oklahoma, these are state actions. And Johnny, we're kind of putting this forward here to kind of tease about going, so if a state takes the action on a public education issue, is that constitutional? Maybe is the first kind of generic question that we're putting out to everybody tonight, listeners, 855-752-4842. So yeah, but just putting out there too. And yeah, just in case anybody missed it, Busted Pencils is sponsored by Minocqua Brewing Company, who sued the state of Wisconsin to end that crazy voucher system. Check it out, though. You always like to give Minocqua a little bit of heads up, a little bit of extra room there. They absolutely are making Wisconsin great again, one beer at a time. Check out MinocquaBrewingCompany.com to see where you can buy their progressive beer. Johnny, but that is the question I think we frame here coming into this. We talked about it last week, Christian nationalism, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, because these are state-driven, I don't know, you say policies or, you must do commandments. I don't know if they're commandments, but because the state has originated these policies, do they have a constitutional leg to stand on in our public schools? I don't know, Johnny. I know we're coming up on the break here, but give you a last little bit here and to take us into the break. What are you pushing forward the idea? And I say pushing. Are you putting forward the idea that maybe this is a state issue?
I believe wholeheartedly that education is a state right. That's how it currently exists. That's how I want it to remain. I think it will continue to be state to state. However, Tim, I think some of these, states belong to a country. And so some of these may have cases that kick all the way up to the state Supreme Court, maybe even hit the national Supreme Court. We certainly can expect to see that in instances where we have like a mandate to include the 10 Commandments in a classroom, or that the Bible is a history book. I mean, these are things that I don't think will make it past the state Supreme Court, but should they'll go to the Supreme Court at a national level. I believe in that system. I think it's a good system. You know what, though, Tim? Let's get into the details because someone might be tuning in that didn't hear us last week. So we'll give you a refresh and we'll get into this when we come back. Busted Pencils.
Is my connection any better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard any breaks today.
Because I found out today that for $25 less a month, I could upgrade my speed to the 1 gigabyte speed.
Bro.
I know.
Welcome to the illogical way that internet provider services work. You just got to call in and say, you know what, I'm canceling it. And then all of a sudden everything gets better and less expensive.
Well, I actually called in. Yeah, we got Mark, but it's funny. I actually called, like I'm going to battle with them. And they were like, can we offer you $25 off a month for higher speeds? I was like, oh yeah, sure.
Well, yeah, you sound good, Tim. You haven't gone digital on us yet.
Okay.
And we got Mark when we come back here. Do you want me to bring us back in, or you got it?
Yeah, you can do it.
All right.
10.
Prairie Dusac.
Oh, yeah, there it is, Tim. I love it. Love it. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, educated educators, talking education. Hey, if you want to jump on the horn and talk with Tim and Johnny, we're here, 855-752-4842. And you know what, Tim? Mark from Prairie to Sac is on the phone. Mark, what's happening, my man?
Yeah, I'm not surprised sadly, what the Supreme Court did. I figured they would find some way to carve out, but trying to make myself more familiar with our Constitution over the past since the Walker days. I guess I found a copy of the Federalist Papers and started reading those, and that is what is shocking to me is they cherry picked a few phrases out of the Federalist Papers. I guess they picked one out where the something about a feeble presidency and feeble government, and taking that out of context, that the founders clearly did not intend the president to be immune. They clearly did not intend for him to be a monarch. They had enough examples in history of monarchs going against the rules, and that it is just sad. I mean but kings actually were subject to law and punishment. I mean, example I don't know if I brought up on your program, but Henry II was whipped for his complicity in the murder of Thomas Becket. I mean, he threw an offhand comment, "Will somebody rid me of this querulous monk or priest?" And his household monks took that upon themselves to go and murder Thomas Becket when he was at prayer. I mean, and Charles II, of course, of England, lost his head because he defied Parliament. I mean, our and getting to the religious issue, our founders clearly intended this to be a secular democracy. I mean that I've just been plowing into The Age of Reason by Thomas Paine, and even though and he kind of was taking the Bible to task, that why should we be so admiring of these people that did some pretty horrific things. I mean that that apparently in Numbers. You talk about the Exodus is that the Jewish people were at some kind of war with the Midianites. So this is before they even had Israel, got back to Israel. But I mean that, Moses ordered his troops to murder all the men, murder all the boys, murder any of the women who had known men, and take, and the virgin girls and girl babies were theirs to take, but everybody else they could slaughter.
Mark, man. He is loaded up. I always love when Mark calls Johnny because he has got so much content, and it always makes me go back to the original Busted Pencils. I could hear somebody going like, "This is an education talk show. What are you guys doing with all this history, world history, and politics?" Like, hey, check it out though. Johnny and I, man, we're old original social studies teachers. So when Mark calls and brings up so much information, before we though really go into the Supreme Court ruling, though, I still think we have a little bit more to talk about on the Christian nationalism and what happened last week in Oklahoma, Texas, and Louisiana, and putting this forward. And Mark, I'm going to agree with you, and then we're going to let Johnny kind of take this on. I agree with you that it was supposed to be a secular democracy, and that there was supposed to be separation of church and state. What's coming up here is that these mandates or these kind of curriculum issues or impositions or whatever you want to call it are originating out of the state. Now, in what we've pointed out is that public education is a state right. I hate using that word, states right, but it comes out of the state. And so these policies got their breath of life at the state level. And so does that put forward then the possibility that they are constitutionally okay? Johnny Lupinacci, and you were kind of messing around or starting to dig at that before we went into this first break.
Absolutely. And I love Mark's call. Mark, thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. And thanks for sharing the knowledge that you have, because all this week, Tim, and probably, more often than not, as we're in this important moment in our history right now as a country and as a democracy, I'm going to keep bringing this up. And it's themed for this week, right? This is the week of the 4th. This is a week of patriotism. Patriotism means more than it's often touted to be. And I want to thank Mark for being a patriot. And I'm going to do that a lot this week, setting a good example of what America means for generations to come, right? How can we set that example? And one of the things that Mark called and contributed, which is really important, is in this moment that we're in, where we're going to, I said last week, I'm going to keep coming back around to it. The kind of politics that we're witnessing is a real, concerted effort towards tyranny, towards, a fascist state. And I want to reserve some of that extreme language, and minimize as often as I use it, but to call it the right thing. An authoritarian government or really a fascist state. You see a real converging on, issues, especially, Tim, when we talk about education, we see a real converging on almost one party. There's
Right.
extreme polars, but the masses are kind of converging. And you think, well, that sounds good. It's actually a dangerous thing, right? And I love what Mark does, calls and shares that information that's rooted in historical truth. But even more important than the information that Mark's sharing is his, again, being a patriot and setting that example to investigate. Listener, tune into civic media, sure, but on your own too, elsewhere, figure things out. Spend more time with long articles. Subscribe right to print media. Subscribe and realize that some of what's on the internet is out there to harm you. So you have to really commit to discerning information, right? And learn what you can and take responsibility for what you communicate with others. I love that Mark did that. He's sharing important history, right? That helps us all be better patriots. And that's really, really important in this moment. So coming back around, Tim, to what we're doing, and I'm going to lean on this in this week of, celebrating patriotism. One of the really important things, I know you and I do this because we call, public education an institution, right? It is a bedrock of democracy. One of the really important things, every single listener out there, separate from your party affiliation, but as your act of patriotism, right? One really important thing, in addition to all the things we're talking about, is that you commit to defending institutions, right? It is institutions that help us preserve democracy, right? Institutions don't live on their own. They need our help, right? And I don't speak of institutions in this sort of broad sense. I'm really saying, unless you make them yours by acting on their behalf. So when we talk about the importance of democracy, unless, and LA Tom reminds us of this, unless we, the people, take responsibility to be the government, then we're just kind of pointing at these empty institutions and hoping that they do good. And that's just simply not how it works. We have to invest in our institutions. They don't protect themselves. They fall one after another unless we defend them, and they're defended from the beginning. So, listener, this is my challenge to you as a patriot this week. Choose the institutions that you care about, whether it's court, a newspaper, a law, a union, a profession. Tim and I already pledged. We're defenders of public education. We're here to defend that institution. We're here for the good, the ugly, the successful, the hope, and we're constantly kind of just diving into it so we can have a better public institution for that stronger democracy. So lots of good conversation from the listeners. Hey, if you want to join us, 855-752-4842, hop on the horn, give us a call, join the conversation. Tim, I promise we're going to get to this. We're going to get to this Ten Commandments and Bibles in the classroom stuff, but this is an important week, right? So, folks, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to dive more into it. Busted pencils, fully education, load it up. Let's talk.
I think you were making Jess nervous on that one, man.
I was fumble-fouling. I said fully education, let it up.
I know.
You're putting words in any order.
I fumble-follied the tagline, but it's a special.
That's all right. Whenever I don't know, like whenever I hear myself talking, I can really mess myself up because I'm like listening. People like, what do you say? I'm like, my problem is right now is I can actually hear myself talking, and that's a real problem because I'm critiquing myself as I talk, and then I can't speak clearly because I'm making suggestions in my mind of what I should have said. I don't know if that's what all went through your head in that moment there, Johnny Lupinacci, but again, pointing out a little bit of the disarray that goes on in my neural network.
Well, no, I was thinking I could squeeze into 30 seconds, and you know where these come from, because I want folks to know this is a go-to kind of list of things for the moment that we're in.
So tie it in during the third segment once you bring it up, say, and some of those things that talked about in the last segment. Here's where you can find more.
Yep, all 20 of them.
Yeah, when we come back, so I want to come back in because I really want to hit what you did, something that I really liked, which is Tim and Johnny, the institution of public education, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. And that's what we're doing here because of its connection to democracy. And then I'm going to throw it back to you really quickly, though, too, Johnny, and be like, okay, now that I've made that clear, keep enlightening us, Lupinacci.
Sounds good.
Is that an image of the big-breasted duck up there again?
No, not again. It's
not again. It's just
okay.
from...
Okay, it's just like, why did it just show back up?
Cam, if you're listening, if you're watching this on X or something, what did you send us?
Give us an explanation, man.
We need context.
I'm not getting that tattooed on my butt cheek until I know what it means.
But once you know, you'll schedule the appointment.
Yeah. You know, I investigate my tattoos thoroughly before they go onto my body.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good practice.
Tim, you got tats?
Yeah, I wish it would have been a good practice in 1986. Yeah, you know I do, dude.
I can't remember, man.
Got a little bit on my arm, and yeah, a couple mistakes from the 80s. Luckily, the mistakes from the 80s are not visually quite aware or present for most of them. But
you got a little lower back tat.
Tramp stamp.
No, I didn't get it. No, not that.
TST.
I don't think those were invented. I got a little bit
Tim,
of the.
They were invented. They were invented.
No, the butt cheek.
Oh.
Yeah. What is it? What is it?
The cloud and lightning bolt.
Right on the tush, huh?
Bring the thunder.
Yeah, and there's
and the lightning.
Story with that at 2 a.m. Erie, Pennsylvania, by Buddha, the tattooist. I'm sure Buddha was responsible for many freshmen, sophomore, and juniors in college's initial bad tattoos.
Funny, man. All this tattoos.
He would always do them. He would always do them for $20.
Oh my gosh, I gotta find that, dude.
Yeah, $20 at 2 a.m. You know how fast you can part with $20 at 2 a.m.
Wow.
If you're an undergraduate, first time away from home.
For the thunder and the lightning.
The funniest part of the story is it hurt so bad. I made him stop before he actually finished coloring it in.
Really?
So is it half done?
No, it's you wouldn't know it unless I told Well, anyway, my goodness.
It looks.
I'm not showing it on air.
Right.
No, then we lose a lot of licenses.
The full color Thunderbolt and Lightning didn't get the full. Anyway.
History is rife with the likes of you. History is littered with the likes of you. We'll never back down in the face of the likes of you. Never back down.
Yeah. Gotta love Anti-Flag. What is that song? Christian nationalist, man. You're no better than the rest. White neo-Christian nationalist. Oh, and 855-752-4842. Give us a call, man. We are talking everything going on right now. It's the week of patriotism. As we say, July 4th coming up. Christian nationalism, biblical, all these things going on. But Johnny, right before the break, though, you made a really clear point that just helped me understand my purpose in life. You talked about us defending the institution of public education, and the way you framed that, you said whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether we need to make it better, the institution of public education is absolutely paramount for defense because it is the bedrock of democracy. And that just came across to me in a way, holy crap, now I feel even more empowered to get on the radio every night of the week and talk about this because it's an institution that is essential to democracy. It is the bedrock. So the public education. So yeah, these institutions that we're talking about here all the time, Johnny. So thank you for helping me out on that one, from giving me some clarity, man.
Absolutely, Tim. It's like the Justice League here, man. You just got to pick your institution and you got to rep. You got to go hard, right? And like, I mean, if you think about it, and I know it sounds funny, it sounds like one big giant ad, but it isn't. It's really what we talk about. If you think about civic media, right, with a commitment to hometown radio refresh, but really with a focus on strengthening democracy, like staring face to face with polarization in this country, saying, hey, how do we talk to one another? How do we learn from one another? How do we have trustworthy information? And how do we have defenders of institutions of democracy that are experts on those, that have fully committed to defending it on all the time? So you think about like our friend Maggie Dawn, a legal expert, a defender of law, right? And thinking about the ways that we each take this up and defend democracy. Tim, you know what? We're really big on the education, the institution of public education. But together, it's sort of like a Justice League of folks who care a whole lot about this country, care a whole lot about and believe in the power of democracy. Tim, and I also want to come back. Whoa. There it is. It's true as the bell rings, Tim. Oh, my gosh. You know what happens every third segment? Sometimes we miss it. But sometimes you miss the bell. You're tardy for class. But we caught it today, right on time. Oof. Defenders of institutions, Tim. Be the best patriot you can be. That is the lesson today. That's democracy in action. When you commit fully to we the people are the government, right? And that's the most important thing when we have these discussions, that we're having them, right? But then we're going to go with it, democracy in action, having that energy, Tim, that you just spoke about to defend your institution, right? All right. And just like that, we got Joanne from Madison. Joanne, join the conversation. What's happening?
Thank you so much. I've got a little point to make and then a bigger observation. The little point is that we're being conservative. If we came down from a different planet and we saw that word conservative, we'd think, oh, the political party that's trying to save public education, that's trying to save democracy, that's the conservatives, right? Well, that's what we are, even though that seems a little twisted because we very much think of ourselves as being progressive, etc. But the larger point is that the discussion here is priceless. To hear people in a calm manner sort out these principles, bringing in these ancient, meaning, ancient in time, whatever, timeless principles, as well as modern day expressions. It's wonderful. So thank you so much for what you're doing. You're talking us off the ledge, those of us who have been upset about the last few days. Thank you.
Absolutely, Joanne. I love that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. Thanks for always bringing your wisdom to the conversation. And I like what Joanne brings up, especially when we talk about being a defender of an institution. I want to pitch this back out there, Joanne. I think it's really important to think that we don't need to save it, because a lot of what's going on in it needs to go away. We need to defend it. We need to think of the core principle. Why do public schools exist? Why does the institution of public education exist? And then we defend by making it the best possible education system it can be. That's the truth for anything. If we think about it in like a sports metaphor and anything else, right? You don't save the game. You play defense to win the game. You play to be in it. So we have to always be thinking. And this is, again, how I want to reframe it. And it comes to Joanne's second point. Appreciate your props, Joanne, in recognition, because that's a conversation we all need to have. How do we remain calm, right? We lean on our skill sets that hopefully, I think many of us, we learned in public education, to hold space for difference and to deliberate, to have conversations that are, dare I say, civil. In this day and age, to have this kind of conversation, to have it in a regulated way, a way where like our emotions and our rational thinking are kind of balanced out and we're able to think through it, we're really able to model something that is pretty radical. We're really able to model this whole idea of that, hey, we can disagree, but we are here to share our passion, our patriotism for better possibility. And so if we think about it, I want to think about it like radical conservatives. We're not really trying to conserve a public education system that's not worked for so many. We are trying to defend and fight hard for a great public education system, to ask the question, what is the purpose of public education and democracy? What's the relationship between those two? And let's fight hard to have it. So that's the one I just want to come back on that in terms of conservatives do want to like preserve the past, but the past does not really work. The idea was there, but we want to stoke the flames, right? And let that fire ignite. That public education can be, and it will be, a strong institution with democracy for future generations.
Man, Johnny Lupinacci. Okay. I love it. I love it. Joanne, thank you so much for the call, and thank you too for the kudos. I put down here too, though, and Johnny, I think, yeah, when she said saving, yeah, we're not saving as much as we're defending, but then the idea of conserving, but when you use that word institution, there is something there that says there is something sacred about an institution that was put forward as an idea, right? An ideal public education. And we know it's not complete. It's not finished yet. It's not great the way it could be. But the institution that was put forth about public education, should we conserve institutions? And I think just playing on those words, though, makes it really interesting in today's politics, because it is kind of funny that the tearing down of institutions that is happening right now seems to be happening from those who were supposed to conserve our institutions. And so the tearing down of the institutions is, again, lots of plays on words there, lots of different plays on the word conserve, but the idea of an institution, and this is where Johnny bringing it back to the idea of this institution for us, particularly on BustED Pencils, and as you say, the Justice League of everybody on civic media doing their bit for all institutions, but what we do here every night, that institution of public education, because of its foundation to democracy. LA Tom is just buzzing up with all kinds of texts in there. Good.
Talking about being a democracy warrior, Tom, and I think that's a great way to put it. And I love this, Tim. We're talking about, if you think about, we're not conserving the institution that was.
Right.
We're valuing the reason those institutions exist and the potential that they have. So if we think about democracy, let's just do a civics lesson 101.
There you go.
Street level definition for democracy. Decisions being made by those directly impacted by the decision. I'm going to say it one more time. Street level definition for democracy. Decisions being made by those directly impacted by the decision. Okay, so if public education is supporting our aptness, our skillfulness, our how successful we are at that difficult task, right? Of holding value to difference and to making decisions. Everybody has a voice, and everybody's voice is valued. Everybody has a responsibility to participate in that decision making, and the decision making ought to be made in the interest of the common good. Preserving, or saying defending, that is sometimes means doing away with institutions. And so if we're looking at public education, we're saying it might mean in some cases stripping it way down, because if we look historically, public education has been a mechanism for sorting the elite, right? For tracking kids, for doing harm to Black and brown bodies, to not having space for women or anybody that identified differently than straight white men, right? Suffer in a lot of our school systems. But if we're to say we are going to defend, we're going to be defenders of an institution of a public education that complements democracy, decisions being made by those directly impacted by the decision being made. Everybody has a voice. Every voice is valued. That's going to mean radically rethinking what schools look like. And I'm here for that, all the energy, right? And so that's the thing. So it's like, I like that Joanne brought this up, because sometimes, we want to be really clear. Are these two guys nostalgic for a past school system? It's like, oh no. But let's say we're ride or die for public education. And what that means is that we're going to go really hard, because it's possible, right, to do better. And we know we can, and we will. Right. So I love that. LA Tom's got fast thumbs in the text line. I would love it. LA Tom. He's on the horn. He's also on the text. We love that from our listeners. Hey, if you want to give us a call, you know what? Hey, give us a call. Call in 855-752-4842. Chop it up with Tim and Johnny. Kicking it
Johnny,
back.
I love what you just said though too. We are here for it, and pointing out to kind of the theme of busted pencils, because we're going to defend the institution of public education because of its commitment to democracy, but we are here for it. And in fact, anybody who's listens to the show or has listened over the years knows that our vision of public education, that we're here for it, how we stop the sorting, how we stop the harm, how we move into an inclusive space, how we elevate what it means to be educated as opposed to being schooled or dealing with what happens in that type of shuffling around of situations that isn't great for kids, isn't great for families, isn't great for communities. We're here for it. Every night of the week, it is, in fact, the discussion. And this is where you are welcome to call this show anytime, because we are defending the institution of public education, but we are here for it every night for a discussion about what would make that institution more, better, stronger, more equal, more inclusive, more liberating. That's what we're doing here all the time, Lupinacci. That's what I love the way you said that.
Well, I love it, Tim. And what I want to point out here for listeners too, because we're kind of holding class, we're riffing off one another, and we've had all weekend to really digest, the explosion, the lackluster fireworks displays of the debate on Thursday. And then, all of the fire that came out of the Supreme Court decision today, or as we discussed it all day on the radio today. And we've been really grappling with what does immunity mean and all of these things. But what I'm going to come back to is I mentioned it last week, and I want to really point readers or listeners to be readers and give them some context for some of the things that I'm especially bringing into tonight's show. Is there is a really great, it's a snappy short book called On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder, and there's a link to a short version of 20 important points to consider if you're really serious about defending democracy. So we're really drawing heavily from that. We want to share more of it. We want you, the listener, to check it out. We think it's really important that we be our best patriots this week, especially with it being the 4th, and we commit to defending institutions of democracy. Hey, listener, stay with us. When we come back, we get more into it. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk when we get back.
Lighten up the phones, my friend.
Oh yeah, sorry, Jess. My chat isn't auto scrolling. I'm gonna have to look into that, because if I don't scroll down, I don't get the chat. So I'm seeing old chats. So we have Sandy when we come back. Tim, just bring her right in, and then it looks like
we'll get Sandy from.
We lost her.
Oh.
But
Did we lose?
Jack
We lost
back on the phone, so I'm gonna screen him right now.
We have Jack,
and then also
Sandy.
And then
new
also,
caller, man. We want to get her back if we can.
Joe Biden is
Johnny, go ahead.
Joe Biden is speaking right now.
Uh-oh. Is he speaking, or is he trying to speak?
Live from the White House, President Joe Biden. I'm pulling it up.
I'm sure he's probably commenting on the Supreme Court.
So should the American people dissent. I dissent.
20 seconds.
May God help preserve our democracy.
Jess, will the next show talk about, or should we not say anything about the breaking news?
Talk about breaking news, absolutely.
Okay. And the next show will probably too?
Yep.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Pete.
There it is. So, fully led educators talking education 855-752-4842 is the number. I think we got
Johnny, jump in.
Yeah, here we go. Tim's digitized. It happens. You know what? It's the curse of the internet. No matter what we do, there's always going to be some kind of little digital interference, probably because there's so much energy and so much static on the airways. Little breaking news for folks. We can't quite get into the content yet because Tim and Johnny, we're on here live with you. We're going to catch up, but you can be sure to stay tuned to Civic Media to get the details and chop it up with shows to follow afterward. You know, our guy, Pete Schwab, I'm sure he's going to be talking about it. But with the breaking news, thank you, LA Tom, for the tip. You know, Joe Biden is speaking right now as we're talking and you're listening on the radio. You know, President Joe Biden is speaking. He's sharing his remarks related to the Supreme Court decision and to the immunity. So we just wanted to mention that. You know, stick with us. We got a few more minutes, and then we're going to be talking more about that on Civic Media. You can guarantee that. So, Tim, we lost you for a minute there. Looks like
I'm back.
on. And you know what? I want to throw a shout out to Sandy from Minneapolis who gave us a call. But I was on one, man. I was fumble-volleying the words all over the place and talking about my guy Timothy Snyder and where our listeners can get more about these 20 points that he makes that help us be stronger patriots, that help us to better understand our civic duty, especially with the rise of tyrannical governments. And I want to just emphasize, I don't use that word lightly. I don't kind of throw that around with hyperbole or to emphasize extremism. I really mean it. We're at a critical moment in this country's history where we're highly divided. You know, we're not always making much sense, and the debates kind of encapsulated that for us. We got to listen to diverse groups of people. We got to listen to future generations. We've got brilliant young people, right? Really advocating for strong democracy everywhere. Amongst that, and it's not just about age, because we got a wise fella on the phone who's a regular caller, Jack from Merrimack. We got Jack on the phone. Sorry we missed you, Sandy, but we got you, Jack. So, Jack, what's happening, my man?
Well, I had a comment or two about the so-called debate, which really wasn't. They could have done better with an AI as a so-called moderator. By definition, a moderator is somebody who sets rules and standards. Would be to call out somebody that's lying all the time.
Yep.
And that just didn't happen. This result of this debate, the media, great media, say Trump won. Well, that's like saying a football team broke about every rule on the field, and when they were caught at it, lied and said, "Oh no, I didn't," and they won the game. And the media says, "Yeah, these guys won." I mean, this is ridiculous. There should be absolutely, if there is another debate, and if Trump wins, we'll never see another debate. There's no question about that, at least not in my life. Of course, I'm an old guy, but anyway, the point is, if there is another debate, one of the minimum rules has got to be real-time fact-checking.
Jack from Merrimack, thank you so much for that call, man. You know, yeah, Johnny, you know, right. The whole fact checking part that just didn't happen during that debate. A lot of people have called that out, you know, and is that an issue, you know, and did that potentially even kind of, you know, make the exchange even a little bit more complicated for, you know, to hear what President Biden was actually trying to get across at that, you know, at the debate. You know, yeah, I don't know. But Jack, we appreciate the call. It's Busted Pencils. It's fully leaded education talk. Johnny, you look like you got you breaking.
You know, I want to talk a little bit more about this really briefly, and then we'll get to it. We got another caller. The phones are ringing tonight, and I love that because it's democracy in action, right? Our civic duty to share these conversations. But what Jack brought up is really important. And listener, if you didn't get a chance to hear the show Friday, go back, grab the podcast from Civic Media. I gave 6 points that really stood out to me from the so-called debate, from the presidential, you know, election campaign trail as it is right now. And one of those is the dangers of just repeated lies. And I want to say this really clearly. It's intentional because it's a strategy and tactic that can be used. If I hit you, Tim, with 15 points that are all over the place, right, and that are unfactual, the amount of energy and the speed you have to debunk those lies, you have to kind of figure out truth from lie. It's kind of got you discombobulated and all around. It's like, what do I respond to? This is a bunch of lies. And I love Jack's analogy. It is like a football team getting on the field and just deciding the rules don't apply to them. They're going to do what they want. And even still losing in that, they're going to say, guess what? We won. And the media is going to be like, you know what? I think they did. And so strengthen up, media. Let's get stronger about this. Hey, do we got time? Let's get Steve. Oh, we lost Steve. Man, we lost Sandy. We lost Steve. You're still listening, Sandy and Steve. Now, we got to get you on quicker. So call in early on the show. Let's get you on because we want you part of the conversation. We love that you're listening. We love that you're giving us a call. Caller, if you want to call anytime, 855-752-4842. Give us a call. Also, if you're in the Madison area or you're up in Minocqua and you just want to sit down and talk in real person, which is another one of those really important acts of patriotism, is getting out and connecting in a corporal way, engaging in corporal politics, getting the body out from behind the computer and going and having a coffee with somebody, going on a walk, sitting and talking with people. Small talk matters. You know where you can have some great small talk about politics? Minocqua Brewing Company. They're big time advocates for public education and democracy in this country. They're working hard to build community and to make great beer. Tim, you know what is always my nightmare is that there's only going to be one beer left. Well, you know where there's never one beer left? Minocqua Brewing Company. They've always got one ready to go for you. You can be that. 4th of July can be double fisted Minocqua brews. I know I'm going to have a whole cooler of
You're
Minocqua
not driving too.
Hey, no driving. Be careful. Remember, drink responsibly.
No driving.
But throw back the brews. It's going to be celebrating patriotism by defending institutions. More of that all week long when you join us on Busted Pencils. Tim, love kicking off the week with you, my guy. Let's have a big week. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. See you tomorrow.